Hi, Dr. Marian Owen, and I'm here to talk to you today about the microbiome and how your dietary choices can impact your microbiome and therefore your overall health. So, above in this newsletter, Susan has gone into some detail about what the microbiome is, and I encourage you, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, to hit pause on this and go up and read her very informative snip on that issue. And I'm taking it from what she's left us with and moving forward and discussing dietary patterns and how they may be impacting our microbiome and therefore our overall health. So, a few years ago, there was an effort to do genetic testing and genetic typing of all the bacteria that make up the human microbiome. And today I'm very specifically talking about the gut microbiome, but it was, of course, doing skin and ears and every part of our body, and the microbiome is different. And even every part of our intestinal tract, the microbiome is slightly different. So the effort was to really assess, like, what should humans have on their body, what do healthy humans have on their body. And what we found was that answer is quite variable. We all have bacteria, but we all have different makeups of our bacterial colonies. Bacteria really influence one another and impact who else can be around in their community. And so we found that instead of there being one best microbiome, there are many patterns that are indicative of health. And for a while, I just kind of sat with that and was trying to figure out, well, what does that mean? How can that be, and how can I, as a clinician, interact with it when I'm not sure what's supposed to be there, or what's important about those patterns, and how do we impact it safely? And now there's an emerging understanding that it's not so much the bacteria as what the bacteria produce that is what indicates a healthy microbiome pattern. So backing up, we eat food. There are bacteria in our intestines. We, of course, digest and absorb most of the food that we eat, but the bacteria get whatever leaves the small intestine that we didn't absorb, and they start working on that. They eat that. And most of the time, as they're doing that, they can't completely break down, say, the fiber that they've eaten. And so they're releasing byproducts of, like, they take the fiber in, they get some energy out of it and release something else. And often that is, as Susan mentioned in the article above, short-chain fatty acids. And those short-chain fatty acids then impact our digestive tract. There's one in particular that for years we've known is really a healthy byproduct of our bacteria, that's called butyrate. And that's something that whenever I do deeper dive stool testing with you guys, one of the reports I get back is how much butyrate is your microbiome making. And so that is a clear indication of health, because butyrate is very important for the colonic cells. They use it as an energy source. So it's really important that that's getting made. We don't get it much in our food, but the bacteria make it for us from the food that we eat, specifically from the soluble fibers that we eat. So the food comes in, the bacteria do something to it, and then they make a product. And that product we're now referring to as a postbiotic. So the food is the prebiotic, the bacteria is the pro, and I don't know why that word's still sitting there, but the biotic, the living thing, and then the postbiotic is what's coming out as a result of that bacteria's biological process. That then impacts our gut health, and what we know for sure is that our gut health then impacts the rest of our health. There's indications for the microbiome and the healthy gut impacting risks of Alzheimer's, mood, profound studies on mood and anxiety with the microbiome. Parkinson's disease very clearly has been associated with a certain microbiome patterns. So our overall health is highly impacted by our gut health. So if that's true, and it's what the microbiome is producing that's the critical thing, then we need to make sure that what we're eating is providing our microbiome what it needs to make the things we're asking it to make. So we know some of that, and of course, we do not know all of that. The levels of complexity of this just get broader and broader and more fascinating. And yet, as we learn more, it seems to drive at least me in the way I'm thinking about it back more and more to the basics, which is, what are you eating? So when we look at studies that are done on areas called blue zones of the world, and blue zones are areas where people native to that region seem to live much, much longer than people with similar genetics that aren't in that region. And when we go and study what are the behaviors and the diets and lifestyle patterns of people in blue zones that are living these long lives, they tend to walk everywhere they go. And then when we look at their diets are profoundly local. They generally have a high percentage of their calories from vegetable matter. Their diets are quite varied in color. They tend to eat a lot of fish and nuts and vegetable protein over animal protein, cultivated animal protein. They tend to eat more whole grains, and their diets tend to have lots more spices and herbs than the diets of the people with similar genetics that aren't having these longevity benefits. So for the average person in the United States, the diet that best describes that's I think easiest to maintain, is a Mediterranean style diet. So a diet that is foundational vegetables, legumes, whole grains, fruits, and then up at the top of your dietary pyramid of intake, your foundation layers being colorful fruits and vegetables, whole grains and beans, and the top of the pyramid allowing in a little bit of dairy, a little bit of animal fat, and a little bit of animal protein, but a good bit of fish is usually involved in a healthy Mediterranean style diet. So that is why, as a general practice, when patients in our clinic ask, how should I be eating, what should I be eating, Susan and I generally use as a jump off point a Mediterranean style diet. If you do that most of the time, we feel confident saying that you will have a healthier microbiome and a healthier overall feeling in your body than if you eat the American style diet, which is highly processed, typically high in carbohydrates, low in colorful fruits and vegetables. And so just making that shift, although very few of our patients come in eating that way. I have to say, you guys are baseline a pretty healthy group of people. But I do have a lot of patients that are doing other types of diets that are advocated by personal trainers and sometimes by nutritionists that are a little bit more extreme. And I would say whenever you move your diet from the Mediterranean style diet, you need to ask yourself, one, why am I doing this? What are my goals? And two, what am I taking out and what am I putting more of in as I make this dietary change? And is that good for my microbiome? Because just today I read a study on keto style diets that shows an increase in heart disease. And there are some patients I have that are on keto style diets whose cholesterol levels go down and inflammation goes down and they feel great and their bodies are losing weight. And I can't find a reason to say they need to stop doing that. But I would say that my patients that are doing that successfully are, with their carbohydrate calories, they are eating colorful vegetables. They're not using those carbohydrate calories for sweet things. And I think that the pattern that I see with ketogenic diets, as done by most Americans, like if they're doing what I see on the grocery store shelves that's calling itself keto okay, I don't think you're going to be getting enough fiber to feed the good bacteria in your gut. You are certainly going to be having microbiome shifts. And I wonder, as I read that study today, if that microbiome change is also what's impacting coronary artery disease risk in people who are doing the keto style diets. Another style diet that people talk to me a lot about is the paleo diet. And none of these diets have very clear definitions, but when someone tells me they're eating paleo, what I hear is I'm eating a lot of protein, concentrated protein, so generally that's animal protein, and I'm eating very, very low sugar or added sugars. And as a general dietary pattern, very high animal protein isn't something that I think is necessarily safe and healthy. I think you can eat a healthy paleo diet, but I would say what I often say to patients is, well, if the paleo diet had meat in it, it was because someone in that community just ran 20 miles chasing down an antelope to bring that meat back to the community. And so if you do that, I think eating a lot of meat might be okay, but as a general rule, I don't think high intakes of animal protein, especially when the animal protein is highly processed, like in the forms of bacon or beef jerky, or even some people are eating pig skins again, fried pork rinds again, as though that's part of a healthy diet ever in any possible way. And the answer to that is, of course, it isn't. Highly fried fat, not healthy. It might help you meet your fat intake goals for the day, but I think that's going to be, again, this is in the ketogenic category, that's going to be one of those that leads to that high heart disease risk ketogenic person. So again, what you're adding in is going to be taking something out, and you want to be really thoughtful about that. So again, I think you can be healthy paleo style. And again, I think paleo style is mostly, I think what people mean by that is really low carb, really low processed carbohydrate. So if what you're taking out is sugars, added sugars, refined flours, I think that's great. But if what you're taking out is fruits and vegetables, I think that that's problematic, especially if it's vegetables. So then that gets me to vegans. Vegans who eat tons of vegetables and are mindful that they need to balance their protein intake. And if you are a vegan and you don't know what I mean by that, you need to find that out before you continue being vegan. So balanced protein intake, and recognize that the vegan diet is typically very low in omega-3 fats. It's typically very low in vitamin B12, and you need to find sources of that for yourself. So if you're going to be on a vegan diet, you need to be looking at that. But also, again, like when I'm in Whole Foods and on the shelves, it's like, this is vegan, this is vegan, this is vegan. Well, it's like potato chips, and yes, tortilla chips are vegan, but that doesn't mean they're part of a healthy vegan diet. So highly processed, fried and shelf stable, basically anything shelf stable is questionable. So if you're eating convenience vegan, it's very unlikely that you are eating in a way that's particularly good for your microbiome, because you're going to be getting a lot of processed carbohydrates in that diet, and the processing takes out the fibers that are those good prebiotics for the bacteria to turn into postbiotics. So when you're eating a highly processed vegan diet, you may be missing out on things that make your microbiome healthy. So simple things that I think anyone can do to improve the health of their microbiome. I think we could include small servings of whole grains 1 or 2 times a day. Nuts and seeds are lovely sources of prebiotic fibers. Color, not Skittles, but carrots and beets and tomatoes and peppers and radishes and purple broccoli and all these different very interesting and delicious flavors that have different nuances. All of those little things that create nuance that isn't a fiber, and it's not a vitamin, and it's not a mineral. It's a polyphenol, or it's a chemical that the plants are making basically to protect themselves from being eaten. But they feed the bacteria in our gut at the very least, and at a higher level, they also tend to interact with our genetics in a positive way that decreases inflammation and increases anti-inflammatory pathways, antioxidant pathways. And so when we take those things out of our diet, not only is it harming our microbiome, although that is the focus for today, but it's changing the way that our cells receive information and how they react to it. So for your microbiome and therefore for your health, a Mediterranean style diet is the best thing that I can recommend for you. Well, here's to your health and to the health of your microbiome, and I hope you have a wonderful spring, and I will be back with you soon.